Support and resistance are, I think, by far the most powerful tool in all of trading. Um, Support and resistance, at the heart of it, all they mean is support is where buyers are jumping in, and resistance is where sellers are jumping in. And it doesn't use any crazy math. It doesn't use any indicators. It doesn't use any of that. It is just monitoring price action. Um, and so what this means, it's a level where you can expect price action to not necessarily reverse, but to get a bounce of some kind, or that a stock or a coin has just a certain level that is kind of like the point of control. And so what I have here is a 12-hour Ethereum chart. And so this is over a year of data on this chart right now. And the reason for that is that I think Ethereum has quite a few very strong support resistance lines, but I think that the one example is really clear to see, and it shows it really nicely. And so for one example of this, we can see that if we follow the Ethereum price action from back at the beginning, we can see that this price drops pretty steadily and pretty quickly until it gets bought up around this area. And same thing, price continues, gets bought up around this area, bounces a little bit more, gets bought up here, and the price goes the other direction. And so these three spots right here, where actually exactly where this price action currently is a perfect support. And so this is where this coin was getting sold off really quick, and then it found support here. Buyers jumped in and scooped it up 3 different times, and it goes the other direction. And it doesn't revisit this price for a very long time, and then eventually it comes back down, and it's testing. Well, this is actually pretty close. Testing it for support again, testing it for support again. And so what I'm going to do, instead of drawing all these circles, I'm going to add one line to the chart. And this is how I like to mark my support and resistance on all of my charts. Just one horizontal line. I actually have it a little bit, I have 20% and it's gray, so it doesn't stand out a whole lot, but I can see the price on the chart. And so this is a support resistance line, and it's absolutely the strongest one that I would mark for Ethereum currently. And so the reason for that is that it's support here, support here. And the second that this price fell through, we can see that this price came back up to retest that support resistance line, and it actually got rejected. And so where people were, coming in and buying it up at this level, if it falls through, it's now resistance. And so that's why these levels are so key. And we can expect the exact opposite to happen, that if this price were to punch through that resistance level, it now becomes support. And so if it comes back down to test it, people are going to jump in right here to buy it up, because it's probably going to go the other direction again. And that's why I think support and resistance are, some of the most important, yet very fundamental, basic sort of trading idea. One thing that I do want to point out that's important to note is that I mark all of my charts with just a single line, like that, for support resistance. But this exact price is not necessarily the support or resistance. It is technically more accurate for it to be, you should really think about it kind of as a support resistance band. And so essentially this, if I just mark this whole area, because it's not super clean cut. I mean, we have candle closes back here that, this candle closed a little bit lower, this wick is a little bit lower. And so they are more of zones, essentially, a support resistance zone. The only reason that I don't use these on charts because it just gets a lot noisier. It doesn't show as clean cut. And if you understand that they are zones, using a line is totally fine. And so I recommend, acknowledging that these things aren't super clear cut, but that they do have a little bit of leeway in them. But for the most part, they hold very true. And so if I were to, this one example that I gave here is pretty clean cut for Ethereum, because there's nothing down here. The price totally bottomed here. It bottomed here again. Now it's getting rejected at the same spot. And so this support resistance is pretty clean cut. When you start going into price action, it gets a little bit noisier. But let me just kind of try to show an example of how I would mark up some of these support resistance. And what I do is I look at a lot of the pivots. And so I see a pivot here, I see pivots here, here. And so I'll go through and mark a lot of those things. And it also can help if you actually go to a higher time frame. And so I'll try that on this one. And so if I go out to the 1-day chart, I'm looking at this spot right here and I'm saying, okay, well, that's a pivot. Let me just, put a line here. Here's another pivot. Let me put a line here. There's, a couple that are happening up here that, aren't quite as clear cut. I see this top here overlaps with these pretty well. And so I'll add one on that. This top is certainly going to be, tops and bottoms are almost always going to be support resistance of some kind. And so without me cluttering up too much, let's go back down to our 12-hour so it looks the same as what we were doing before. What we can see that like just marking those support resistance actually gives you a pretty good trade strategy already. It's not perfect because I don't have it, completely finished up, but these lines that we marked with these pivots and these pivots back here, it's not perfect in this area, but in a lot of these, this was getting bought up here. This was support, came back here. This was resistance. And the second it got back on top of that line, it's now moving the other direction. And same thing's true here. This was support here, support here. It actually was support here. It just got sold off really quickly. And the same is true for the next line up. So all resistance, all support. This was actually a support retest. It didn't carry through very far, but this is a heavy zone of activity, direction. The price action does tend to, I don't want to say struggle in these areas, but it's the spots where, if they get past the support resistance, there's usually a move higher. And so it's all of the direction changes. And so this is a 12-hour. This shows the main ideas. We can actually even zoom in. So if we're looking at all of this, we're going to zoom in on just this spot because this works on all time frames. And so if we go down to a 2-hour chart, let's make this a lot bigger so we're seeing it a lot more. And so now we're zoomed into just a matter of a couple days. So how far is this? This is a month of data here. But what we have is already a support or a resistance band right here. And so as soon as this price came down, tested that, drove lower, actually had a big reversal. I mean, this is, a 35% run up and gets reversed at the same spot again. Goes the other direction. Same spot again. And so what's happening is that sellers are realizing, hey, people took profits here, people sold off here. Same thing's happening here. Hey, people sold off here. And so they do it again. And they do it again. And this move was strong enough that it jumped above it. And so what happens when it jumps above it? Impulse higher. And so this is why the support and resistance are, in my opinion, the most clear cut. Because essentially if you are trading this long or short and you see this get rejected or you see it break through a level, it's an idea that, the direction is changing or that a bigger move is coming. It's sort of like a stepping stone on the way higher. And we can see that like this, it really did. It struggled down here for a while. Struggle. And the second it goes above it, yet another, 30+% move higher. And the same is true for the support on this. And so the support's trickier because we have one drop through here, but I would be marking this, much like this zone. And so I would say that this was, did not do that right. Let me change the color on this so it just makes a little bit more logical sense. And so we can think of this support band as being green because people are going to buy it up, and the resistance band being red because sellers are going to push the price down. And so this one actually, price fell through here, actually retested it, but then the bulls jumped in and bought that back up really quickly, which is, again, a very good sign of strength. But support, resistance, back the other direction. Support, resistance, back the other direction. Support, resistance, back the other direction. Support, resistance, breakthrough. And now this is the new floor. And so we can actually, expand this whole band. And this is where, me drawing my just horizontal line comes into play here. Because if this price comes back down to this is going to be a place that Ethereum gets bought. The buyers are going to jump in at this wall. And I'm actually would add a couple more that, we had a little stuttering price here and there. I would actually add that this is actually, kind of the floor. That if the price were to pull back to here, I would buy that because that's going to get a move higher. And if it doesn't, you know that it's just coming down to this line. And so you have kind of two entry ideas. And if it breaks through the bottom here, you want to short on this because all the sellers see this. And so you short on this spot and you're getting another move lower. And so support and resistance are, super, super fundamental. They just use price action, but they are one of the most foolproof trading strategies. And it carries true through all indicators. And so if you pair this idea with other indicators that you use, I think that you become, significantly stronger. You reduce false signals. You have, more ideas about where to enter and exit trades. So one thing I also want to point out is that support and resistance, a lot of people don't make the connection themselves, but a lot of people are, one thing that's super important is that they actually are really good for take profit levels. And so a lot of people will enter a trade and not have a plan on where to exit. And so essentially if we did that, let's say that, we identified that this was resistance, this jumps above this price. And so you can buy on this support line that's right here. And so a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'll just hold this, forever. We're going to all-time highs. And that's probably not the right thing to do. The best thing to do is look at, where huge resistance is. This is massive, massive resistance here. And so enter your trade in this zone and set this as your take profit level. Take that move. Sell at your resistance, buy at your support. It's one of the strongest strategies that are out there. And just for the sake of it, let me let's find a different coin, and I will mark. I'll do this kind of an example. Let me mark one up as how I would mark up my own chart if I were to, I don't know, let's look at XRP. And so if I was looking at XRP, let's go to a 4-hour chart. I'm just going to mark this up. If I'm going to trade a coin, this is the first thing I'm doing. I open up a totally blank chart and I'm saying, okay, that's strong support. A little bit of loss again. I use the lines instead of the bands. I realize that this is all kind of part of bands. Strong support resistance. Bought up here, bought up here, bought up here. Sold off. Sold off. And right now is a decision point for XRP. It's actually hard to tell if it's above or below it, but it came from above. And so until it drops below, this is support. I would mark something up in these. So this is tough because we have, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. I'm going to mark one just as kind of like a placeholder so that I know if I'm zoomed in over here, I see this support or this resistance that's happening over here. It's not perfect because it's a band area, but I can know by placing this line, hey, XRP's got a lot of buyers and sellers here, and it's going to be a decision point for price. So if I zoom out, let's make bigger targets here. Let's go to the daily. If I'm making bigger targets, pivot points right here. Points here, so we have this pivot, that pivot, pretty much all of these bottoms. And so it'll cut through a lot, but like this works, that works, this works, these work, bought up here. And so this works for almost all of them. And again, the further you go in on time frames, the more granular these will get. But hopefully it's clear seeing this as to why each of these lines that I have are marked, that we have these touches here, we have these that are coming in near that area, these are getting bought up, sold off, bought up, bought up, bought up, buy, 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 sold off, sold off. And so hopefully that's becoming more apparent. And again, it's true on every single price scale. Let's go into a 1 hour example here. So this is XRP on the 1 hour. And so what we can see is that the price was bouncing here. So we have a bottom here, a bottom here. Let me mark that as, this is support, support becomes resistance here. It breaks through it. It's support again, going higher. And so you can take this quite literally level to level. So this isn't a support resistance level for the entire chart like I was showing earlier. This is a 1 hour. This is a support resistance level on, just a couple days. And it's true here as well. So if I just mark this line, I mean, resistance, 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 support, and it's been support ever since. So these support and resistance lines can work for every single strategy. They work for all time frames. They work for all coins, no matter what. Some of the super, super small caps won't follow it. But for the most part, these are very, very robust to follow. Highly, highly recommend understanding support and resistance before trying to throw in too many other indicators.